if you don't know me, my name's Chris. I am the co-founder of UK Homes Network. I set up UK Homes Network this year with my brother David. UK Homes Network is the first social media platform exclusively for the property industry. So if you've not signed up, please do. We'll put the link in the chat, or you can go to the app stores and you can search UK Homes Network. Tony's really active in UK Homes Network. So if you've got any questions that you don't feel comfortable asking in the chat, or you maybe want to talk a bit more about a specific project, then Tony's in there and you can actually message him directly and put anything you need to towards him. We have got another webinar lined up next Friday. That's my commitment. My promise to you guys is that we will be trying to run a webinar now every Friday. I'm going to be joined by Andy Butts. Andy is the New Homes and Investment Director for Centric. Centric are a huge agency that deal in asset management, land and new homes, and property investment. They've got offices in, they've got one in, I think it's Hong Kong or Singapore. Don't know which one. They've got offices in Birmingham and Manchester now. And they are doing an amazing job of not only re-educating the industry and bringing standards up, but also providing fantastic property investments to investors here in the UK. So Andy's going to be doing on Friday a session of what to look out for in 2025. Also looking over 2024, what the trends have been. Has it all really been doom and gloom with the industry? So please do join us for that one. It's going to be a really interesting hour. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tony, and Tony is going to give us a tour de force of estimating and build costs. So Tony, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Chris. Are you all right?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah.
Good.
So we've got you in to do a webinar. Could you just give people a bit of background as to who you are, how you're at this point? Obviously, we started our businesses around a really similar time, so I feel like we've been in the trenches together. Can you share what the last year's been like for you?
So I'm Tony Walker from Shropshire, and I set up Help Build in officially October last year, but we really got going at the start of this year. So kind of similar sort of time frame journey with Chris. My background is construction. Ever since I was 18, I've done a mixture of working in builders merchants. So that's right from sales to managing, and that's through independents and right through to nationals with the likes of Travis Perkins. So I've got a wealth of experience working for suppliers. And then my second half of my career, I actually worked for contractor, where I was official title was the operations manager. It was a £3 million turnover contractor. I managed about 30 guys in there. And we did everything from small refurbs up to £1 million commercial developments. So barn conversions, refurbs, conversions, new builds, extensions, etc. For a mixture of commercial and domestic clients. When I was with them, I did everything from tendering to buy-in to running a team of lads to project management, you name it, right from start to completion. And the reason I set up Help Build was I saw a bit of a gap in the market to start with. It was that we used to get so many phone calls from people who needed help in budgeting and knowing how much a building cost was going to be. But the issue with that is, unless you're live and ready to go with planning, drawings, you own a property, unless the builder's your friend, the likelihood of getting a decent quotation off them is so hard to do. And I thought, actually, I bet there's a bit of a market base for that. So when I set up Help Build, we launched 3 main services. So the first one is budgeting and estimating. So I do estimates and budgets for property developers, homeowners and actual contractors. So I've got a number of contractors on my book where I do their estimates for. So that's where my knowledge of rates and understanding costs come from. So then it allows me to offer that to property developers. So when I do an estimate and a budget for them to see if a project is feasible and looking to gain finance, they're real rates. They're not just guessing and not just computer generated rates. They're rates which I'm pricing for contractors on a weekly basis. Um, so yeah, our first year has been really, really interesting. I've loved most of it. You see, you lie awake at night thinking about things you never thought you would do, and you experience all the feelings of being a business owner. But genuinely, it's been the best. I've met some fantastic people. I've got new friends, like Chris said, we met and been through similar journey. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the second year now, and looking how we can help more people. And we're looking at ways of offering our knowledge and our service on a wider scale. So that's our plans for year two.
Amazing. And for the average developer, we've got Dee in the chat. She's a property developer in Hemel Hempstead. For giving Dee as an example, what sort of point would she come to you within the life cycle of her build? Would it be sort of in planning stages or?
Yeah, so D can come to us at any stage. So say for example, D's used to doing a certain type of development, what she's got used to, but then they're now looking at a new build, not feeling quite comfortable about putting costs together, done some basic rates and thinking, yeah, this looks feasible, but need to get finance companies now, as I'm sure a lot have said on previously, that you need a decent schedule of works now with costings next to it, and not just what we call the back of a fag packet calculation to get funded. So I would put together a full schedule of works with costings next to that, which will really make the proposal to, one, if it's feasible and does it look right, and two, if you are going to gain finance, then you've got a full document there to be able to show that you've looked into your costs properly. And then from on during the development, it might be that they need some support with project management, which we also do. And we also offer procurement support, so we can procure labour and materials for the project. So that through the project, we've got added value services where we can make sure that developments you're going to be saving money through.
Great. And I imagine obviously over the last 12 months, the build cost market has been quite volatile. Is that something you've been able to really cut through with your customers and ensure that, you know, all the sort of hyperbolic narrative in the media is that everything's so expensive and that we can't afford anything? And are you able to still find those deals and negotiate on behalf
Anything, the materials are more competitive than ever. The
of really?
material market, so builders merchants got rich during COVID, and they could charge what they want, and they could, it was a real supply and demand problem during COVID. Now they're quieter, and there's deals to be had. And that's across the industry, whether it's electrics, plumbing, building materials, or whatever it is, there's deals to be had now. I'll give you an example: 100 mil insulation, which is used across a build. I'm paying prices now what I paid pre-COVID, and
Wow.
timber's come back down because it's settling down across Europe. So if you are doing a project now, there's never been a better time in the last 3 years to buy building materials and get a deal. It really is. Labour rates have settled. Labour went extortionate following Brexit and following COVID. It was scary what the figures were coming through, and a lot of bigger developers sat on land because the figures just were not stacking up. But now they haven't come down drastically, but they've leveled, they've stopped spiraling out of control. And there are trades out there now with a bit more sensible pricing coming through because the demand isn't as big as it used to be. So yeah,
Great.
in terms of getting yourselves deals, now's the time. I've already had emails from suppliers saying that prices are going up in January based on the budget, but that's just them using an excuse for prices to be going up at the minute. I do suspect we are going to see an incline in materials next year, but I think that's going to be across every industry in the country. I don't think that's just going to be building. But yeah, definitely now's the time to be going out there and getting some deals.
Great. Yeah, we've got sorry, I'm picking on people in the audience, but we've got Alex, who's a sort of very active UK Homes Network member, and Alex does some amazing property finance. I imagine that that's something that lenders are looking for, with developers, is to have that consistency with their pricing, with their costing, with their estimating, and by working with someone like you who understands how those prices are stabilizing, gives them a lot more reassurance when they're looking to lend on development.
Oh, 100%. And that I partnered with Roma as well, similar to yourselves, and that's exactly what they said. For people who come to me and get a budget and get a full schedule, I mean, what I'll do is I'll share my screen with you now, and we'll show you how we get. Let's try this.
Dee said that that was really helpful, Tony.
Oh, you're welcome, D. You're welcome. But yeah, if anybody after this wants to book a call or just to go through anything, you're welcome to take my number, and which I'll share in a bit, and I'm happy to help. So is my screen shared now?
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So to give you an example, this is based on a new build. Ignore the rates, for rates are faulty for demonstration purposes. So when you come to me, this is the sort of schedule you get. I can do it in one of two ways with a schedule. I can do square meter unit measure rates, or I can do labor and material split. It usually depends who's doing it and what they prefer. But as you can see, when people literally, Alex has just said in the comments, having a proper build schedule in place gives lenders confidence that you know what you're doing. And that's exactly it. That's what every finance company who I spoke to about what I do has said to me. It proves you know what you're doing.
And Anthony's in there as well, and insurers. So
Yeah.
if you know exactly what the costs are, then it's a lot easier to insure the development.
And
So
sorry, Chris. It's exactly that. And my schedules pull out all the material costs. There's an example I use when I speak to people about this. There's a certain type of Kingspan insulation which people think is just standard, and it's not. It's about £120 a sheet compared to £30 a sheet. If you average about 50 sheets on a project, if you do that across multiple lines, if you're only making 25k profit on a build, you're going to eat into that. And it's not anybody's fault. If you're not doing this on a daily basis and understand products and understand construction, you're not going to know these things. So to guess it is very, very difficult. So when we do a schedule, we pick out the expensive. We can also value engineer it and offer alternatives if it's possible. And you get to feel what it's like. And when a lender, I'm sure Alex will agree with this, when a lender gets something like this is not a fag packet estimate, and it's genuine. And they'll see that, for example, we never know how much the kitchen's going to be on a project. It depends on the value of a project, but we've allowed for £7,500 in a kitchen. So it's really easy to actually, for somebody who receives this, to go, no, we're doing a high-end project. The end value needs to be high-end, so we're going to double that and put it in at 15. And this gives you real legs. And Anthony just put about things being forgotten, and it does. Everything gets forgotten. The biggest three things, and I'll bring it. I was going to bring this up later, but I'll bring it up now. The biggest three things people forget is the power, the gas, and the drainage connections. And especially if it's a new build plot or a number of new builds or a barn conversion or anything like that, if you forget about them at the start, you could be really opening up a can of worms. I've literally just done one. I try not to get involved in connections because they're a minefield and they're time consuming, but I've just done one for somebody. It's a single new build plot with 4 bedrooms. It's a nice plot. I'm guessing people will try and guess and budget 10, 15 grand for all your connections. It came in at £42,000 for all 3 connections. Majority of that was power. And you wouldn't have expected it because there was a house within 10, 15, probably 20 meters. And then there was another house 50 meters away. But the supply for the electric had to come up a private lane. And the only way up that was to dig the trench up 150 meters. And that was the same for the gas. And that for 42k on most people will be their profit. Now, he was buying it for himself and his family, so making a profit wasn't the be all and end all. But if someone's doing this as a development, if you get your connections wrong it's very costly. All I'd say is your power connections, they don't usually charge you to give you an indication of what it's going to cost. It will be a rough figure, but they're usually pretty good at it. So go and get your power connection. It's just paperwork. There's nothing else to it. It's paperwork and a bit of reassurance. Gas, if you're going down the gas route, they usually, Cadent especially, have a really good online tool where it shows you where the nearest gas pipe to connect to, and then they will give you an indication. It's not gospel and it can change, but it gives you a decent indication. And the only people who charge are the water board. They will charge approximately £175 to give you a cost on getting a drainage and water connection. However, if you're going into the realms of doing this, I'd highly recommend spending it up front and making sure that your connection costs are there and you're satisfied with them.
Yeah, we had Ben and Louise on last week from BTS Property Consultants, and they specialize in utilities connections on site. And one of the most dangerous ones that people don't can often overlook is water being connected to the site. So, guys, if you have got chance this afternoon or over this weekend, please do go back and watch that webinar, because it will give massive context to what Tony's saying in terms of how overlooked utilities connections are on site.
100%. And what a lot of people think it's down to the builder to sort them, but most builders will not. They'll do the associated work for it, but they want to be told what they're doing. They don't like getting involved in connections. So really, it's something you want to be doing pre-instructing a contractor.
Yeah, definitely. Tony, there's a lot of work that goes into creating a spreadsheet like this. Could you walk us through what your sort of lifespan is, or sort of lifetime is, working with a client in terms of from being instructed to preparing all this information for them, what it is that who you're networking with, whether it's builders, whether it's building suppliers, that kind of thing? How does it all work from your perspective to get to this point?
Yeah, so in terms of actually producing this a schedule like this, that's probably the simple bit. I get all the details. I do a takeoff on the drawing, and when I do a takeoff, I don't throw it into a computer and it tells me everything. I physically, I look at the drawing and I understand the drawing and I understand the processes behind it. So we do a takeoff, we pull off a specification. I can even do it, but if you haven't got building regulations, because most people, especially if you're buying a site with planning, wouldn't have had the building regulation drawings done. They'll just have the planning drawings done. So I can put in there a basic building reg spec, so you don't have to go and spend the 3 or 4 grand to get that done. And then at initial stage, you'll have to eventually, but just at a budgeting stage. Then I put my rates. So the rates come from me networking with a number of contractors. I've got plasterers, I've got plumbers, I've got contractors who I deal with weekly, and I know what their rates are, I know what their margins are, and then material wise, I procure weekly. So it's very rare that products come up which I haven't purchased recently. So I've got live rates what come up. I know costs on blocks, on plasterboard, and all your general materials. I know when, you'll see down here that facing bricks, for example, I've put a PC sum in of 850, 1,000. Unless you've spec'd a brick on the job, you're never going to know what it's going to cost. But if you're not careful, you might go, I don't know, £450, 1,000 for a brick. Now, there are bricks out there what allow that. But if you're in a decent area and you're doing a decent build, you're not going to be buying a brick for that. So it's important when you do things like PC sums, you put a realistic PC sum in, not one just to get the cost down so it looks more feasible. Put something realistic in. And I was speaking to Centric actually at an event at TDN a couple of months back, and they said they'd prefer you to have overestimated and have money left rather than underestimate and come halfway through the project and go, I've run out. Because ultimately you're going to be paying more interest like that. So even though it's a little bit scarier at the start, they'd prefer you to be a little bit overcautious with things like that. So the knowledge of things like where to include PC sums, value engineering as well, where you can make savings on insulation and stuff like that. But that all should be done at the start of the project and not during the project. Sometimes it's too late.
So what's a PC sum for people that need the
So
labour?
a provisional sum is an unknown. So the easiest one to base that on is a kitchen. So unless you are really on it, you wouldn't have a kitchen design right now. and every property developer and every person taking on a construction project will have a different view on what the kitchen should be. And no one knows how much that kitchen is going to be. Now I'll look at the plan and I'll go, right, there's an island, there's a U shape, it's going to be, it's a £500,000 house, so it's going to be built in appliances, and that will form an idea on a PC sum. But so a PC sum is a figure where if a contractor was to start working with you, if they don't know what the sum is, you put a sum up next to it, so it's allowed in the budget. So if people like finance companies would know that you've allowed it, it's better to put that in than put nothing in, because if you forget about it and then you come up with X amount at the end and you still haven't allowed for it. Windows is another classic example. Unless you know the full window spec, it's very hard to put an exact figure in to supply and fit that. So putting a realistic provisional sum in just means that you have allowed for it. You've got a budget to work to as well.
Amazing. Could you give some examples of clients you've worked with recently in terms of some of the projects that you've worked on them with, and how that's gone? I think it's always good from the audience perspective to understand how this works in practice.
Yeah, in terms of estimating, so ones we've done recently, there was a conversion for a guy who's basically trying to convert it into assisted living, a very old property, so it needed structural work, and it needed obviously reconfiguration. So we thought about routes for drainage and stuff like that. You know, if you're turning it into a 10-bed assisted living from a 4-bed house or whatever it is, what people don't tend to think about from a plumbing point of view is where it's all going. So we did him a project, and basically it was going through probate, so he needed to know the funds that needed to be allowed and things like that. So that there was that side of it for him. I've done one recently for a member of TDM where he just wanted a material schedule doing. He had a really good relationship with his builder. He was really happy with his builder's labour rates, but he wanted to see if there was a potential of buying materials himself. So all we did was a full material takeoff with quantities. We pulled apart the spec, listed it all out, and then we added the rates to it, and that allowed him then to either go, no, I'm comfortable in sticking the way I am, or no, actually I'm going to go and procure all my own materials myself and put a schedule next to it. In terms of project management and seeing projects through, I'm currently just doing a full refurbishment and large extension, 2-story and single story. That's 130 square meter extension. So it's a decent size. And we've just done another one, which is 140 square meter extension, which is all open plan living, bedrooms. But in terms of budgeting, we also do new builds. I've just done a full new build, 2 new build plots in Telford, where that is a full tender package where I've done that for a contractor. So that's where we can differ slightly as well, whereas that every little bit of information was given, I turned it into a full tender return for the contractor to go back to.
Amazing. Guys, just to remind you that if you've got any questions for Tony, please do put them in the chat. He'd love to hear from you and obviously get your take on what's being presented. So yeah, you can find the chat down the bottom. If you want to enter in any questions, please do so. So yeah, in terms of your plans for next year, Tony, what are some of the clients that you're looking to work with? How's it the business taking shape next year?
So what we're looking to do next year, as I said, we're looking to offer our knowledge and our services to a wider audience. So we're launching in the new year is an online course. So what our online course is going to do is it's going to be able to do it in your own time. We are going to offer you from start to finish from a construction point of view. I'll touch on architects, I'll touch on the start of the project, but that's from a construction point of view. And it will take you all the way through your project. It will give you advice on how to find contractors. It will give you things like, for example, people ask me, how do I find a decent contractor? And it's really difficult. Don't trust everything you see on the internet. Is speak to people. If you know developers or you know people who've had work to, speak to them. Talk to contractors. Actually physically meet them. Don't just do phone calls. Ask them to see ask them to see work they have done, maybe similar to yours. And it's things like I'd discuss how to actually pay a contractor because there's ways of doing it and there's ways of not doing it. So it's really important to make sure that things like that we cover is in support. How do you find a decent contractor? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how to procure materials. We'll talk about what materials are. So we're going to put this in a format where it's a self-taught. There'll be different schedules. There'll be different sectors with 10, 15, 20-minute videos covering each project, each part of the project. So you can keep going back to it. With that, we're also going to include documents. So things like the schedules. With our courses, we'll include blank schedules, we'll include blank material comparison, we'll give you examples of rates to use. So from this, we're hoping to be able to offer that to a lot more people nationwide. From there, then as well, if they're looking for further support, I'm looking for people who need support budgeting, need support with procurement. And also from this, we're going to be offering more. Project management is expensive and employing a QS is expensive. But what we want to do is not everybody needs one for the entirety of a project. However, when it goes wrong and things do go wrong, how would it be amazing if you could phone somebody up and employ them just to help you sort that problem out? Now, that might just be a Teams call. That might be 1 or 2 site visits, but we're going to try and offer our knowledge experience on a smaller basis in terms of helping people get out of the trouble what they're in, and just have that support network of somebody on the other end of the phone without necessarily paying for a full project management.
Great. Yeah, because that's Dee's question is, would we still need a QS because of using their insurance?
From that, D, what do you using their insurance for what?
Right. While she's typing back,
Yeah, just what do you need their insurance for? That's probably the question.
she also asked, do you cover the whole of England?
From a project management point of view, no, because it would cost you a fortune for me to try. I think, do you say you're down in London? Did I see you
Hemel
comment there?
Hempstead.
Yeah, for me to travel down there, it would be as much as the project management charge. However, in terms of budget and procurement, yes, I do the whole of England, and UK basically. So yeah, in terms of budgeting and procurement, yes. In terms of project management, no.
Okay, great. And Alex has said, Tony, can you help costing multiple unit projects, say up to 20 units?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable doing up to 20 units, depending what they are. I think for that, when you get to that stage, it's very, very bespoke. So it's probably worth you sending me some details and us having a conversation about it. I do try and stay under 10. However, if it's 20 units of similar or a 20 unit conversion or it's 20 similar units, then I'd happily get involved in it.
Great. And I just want to go back to that subject around the QSs because you fit quite nicely into this, isn't it? In terms of the style that you work in. So we'll get on to Dee's question in a second, but in terms of how you fit in versus a QS, QS probably would manage bigger sites,
Correct.
a lot more builds going on, whereas you're specifically targeted at the SME developer, the one that's probably building 10 units, up to 10 units a year, that kind of thing, where you can go in and give them that personal service and do it a little bit more flexibly with that individual. Is that kind of how it works in terms of where a QS fits into
Yeah, exactly that. Somebody put me, I'm in between an estimators online and a QS. So people think I'm going against a QS. I'm not. There is a place for a QS. And when it comes to things like larger developments and companies who have lots of developments on and bigger projects, QSs pay for themselves completely. They really, really do. But if you're just doing a conversion or a small refurb or anything up to 20 plots, you might not need a QS to do that if you're comfortable, and depending on whether you're employing a turnkey contractor to do it all, 100%, I don't believe you always need a QS unless you feel like you need somebody to sit in between you and the contractor. If you're employing several subcontractors and supplying materials yourself, you may need somebody. Whether it's a QS, I don't believe so. Project manager, a decent site manager, somebody like myself as a consultant, sit in the middle And QSs are expensive because of their knowledge and their experience, but their experience tends to come in on larger sites, in my opinion. When you're coming down to a smaller SME level, you just need somebody who can support. And also, this is the example I use. QSs very much generate on unit of measure. If you're doing one house and you've only got 5 square meters of wall tiling, the going rate for that will be approximately £180 for labour. You are not going to get a tiler turn up and do 5 square meters of tiling for £180 unless he's a good friend of yours. So I look at it and go, right, well, actually, that's a 2-day visit for a tiler. So really on costing, you need to allow 2-day rates, not the square meter rate. So that's where, from a construction point of view, I know because I've been there, and you're not going to get. So when I do a lot of my costings, I base it on what's it physically going to cost you to get a tradesman to turn up to site and do that job. And that's where we differ a little bit from the QS. And yes, estimators online are exactly the same thing. They quantify, which is fine. It's what I do, but they don't necessarily think about the execution of carrying out that for the money you think you're going to.
Great. So yeah, back to D, using their insurance against the costs. So if they get it wrong, it falls back on them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a tricky one, really, D, because I mean, I've got anybody who does anything like I do, like a QS should do, should have professional indemnity insurance. The issue you're going to have, and this would even be with a QS, is who's in the wrong. So if a QS is allowed for X amount of something, but on site it's different, is that the QS's fault? Is that a site problem? Is that a contractor problem? It's very, very different now. A decent QS, yes, will probably offer a full insured package, but that's what you pay for. That is why you pay top whack for a QS when they back their quantities.
Yeah. We're lucky enough to be joined by Anthony in the audience. So Anthony obviously is an insurance expert from Bridge Insurance Brokers, who we recently did a webinar on. Anthony specializes in latent defect insurance. So obviously, if you guys want to network after in the UK Homes Network regarding insurances on site, then that would be a really valuable conversation for you guys to have to understand what insurances you are covered. But yeah, like Tony says, I think it would be more down to what insurances you put in place on that site before the build. And of course, working with Tony ensures that you've got those costs estimated so that the insurer feels more relaxed about working with you, or more contented working with you. Great. So Tony, what are the kind of things that can go wrong on site? You know, things that haven't been budgeted for, things that haven't been estimated for. Let's say I'm an SME developer. I'm going to build 10 units this year. I'm fairly new. I haven't really done many big projects by myself. What are the kind of things that I can miss out on? I know we've talked about utilities connections, but what else is there that's
Has everybody got all Friday? So look, the first thing I would say is everything goes wrong on a construction site and it will never be the same. So when things go wrong, it's natural in construction. One thing I'd say is, in going back to selecting a builder, always ask a contractor what they did when something went wrong. And if you get to go and see some of their existing clients, ask them the same question, because things go wrong. It's whether it's finding a solution, and that's what we do at Help Build, is we find solutions to problems. And that's the most important thing. Find a solution. The nitty gritty of whose cost and whose fault it is can come at a later date. It's finding a solution to get the project going. In terms of things, what really go wrong in tests, especially from a costing point of view, is people taking on, so like yourself, if you're new and you're taking on 10 units this year, there's 2 ways of getting it built. You turn to a turnkey contractor and they do the whole development from start to finish. You're there as a client. That's it. You decide on the finishes. You'll be paying them, but they will take control, but you will pay for that. That is fine. You're going to make smaller margins, but 9 times out of 10, it gets done at a quicker rate, and it's a lot less stress. Your other way of doing it is to be employing your different subcontractors. So you'll employ your ground workers to get it out of the ground if we base it on a new build. You're going to employ your bricklayers to get it up to wall plate. You employ your roofers, your carpenters, your kitchen fitters. So you'll do it, but someone's got to manage that. The biggest mistake what happens is people watch Grand Designs and they watch all the programs on telly and they think, this is easy, I can do that. And it's not rocket scientist. I'm not a clever guy in terms of brain power, and it's not rocket science, but there's procedures and a knowledge to it. And the biggest thing people do is go, I can manage that, but I also work 60 hours a week because that's how I can afford to do it in another job, but I'm still going to project manage, and it will never ever work. If you're employing different subcontractors, they've all got to turn up at the right time. They all have a job to do before the next subcontractor comes in. What will tend to happen is the plasterer will come in and then they'll go, well, your carpenter hasn't boxed out all the steels. And then you'll ring your carpenter up and your carpenter go, it's not on my list of jobs to do. You never told me I needed to do it. Well, okay, and that's no problem. But when you can come back, well, I'm booked on another 2 week job now, so I can't really come back for 2 weeks. That means I'm not getting it plastered for 2 weeks and I lose my slot for the plastering. So in terms of physical cost, it's not the end of the world when something like that happens. However, you've just delayed the whole process by weeks. And that is just through people not necessarily understanding. So if you're new to it, I would either go down the turnkey contractor and be around and learn, or I'd employ a PM, project manager. A good site manager can give you the missing elements. So maybe have a site manager. I would, especially on anything over a small refurb, I would not go down a route if you were fresh into it of not having somebody with experience of management of the project and putting a plan together to make sure this is done, then that, then this, then that. And that is vital to making the project go smoothly, because those contractors you just sent away may send you an invoice for 5 lads who now can't work for 2 days. It depends what was in their contract. So construction is easy in terms of it's not like operating on somebody. It's not, it's not massive in terms of knowledge, but it's very, very easy to get wrong if you've never done it and you don't understand the processes. And also buying materials incorrectly, buying materials and not having materials on site of stand down time. You need the materials there. You need to schedule your projects and you need to book the time for them to be there. Procuring your materials is so important. I'd recommend getting free suppliers, free really good suppliers, and developing relationships with them. I still do that now. Even now I know that I'm paying X from here and X from there, I still give the merchants opportunity to supply the materials for me, and I procure, and I don't always go with the cheapest. Sometimes I know certain merchants' blocks are terrible quality, so you get a lot of wastage. So it's developing your relationships with your suppliers, going in, introducing yourself, talk to the managers, and that is so key. You'll get better rates, and also invoice check them as well. You could end up paying 20%, 25% more on your materials if you're not checking your invoices. Everyone's human, everyone makes mistakes. So if you've agreed a price, keep a record of it on a simple spreadsheet and then check that invoice when it comes through.
Yeah, I think we were saying this off camera, weren't we, Tony, that the planning stage is so difficult now.
Yeah.
It's so expensive. The amount of stress you can accumulate just going through the planning stages, that when you actually get out on site and start preparing the build, that it can feel like a massive relief. So these kind of things get put to the wayside, and you do sort of I don't know, maybe naively or optimistically think you can just crack on and you're over the worst of it now. But that's where a lot of developers can slip up, because this is the stuff that they should be doing. This is where they need to be crunching those numbers and making sure that they're on track.
100%. I think there's a general consensus that it gets put to one side. Then the development, also the exciting bit, the drive is gone. But this is where it starts. This is where you're either going to make or break. If you've done your budgeting and you've done your financing right, this is where now you've got to execute it, and making sure that that happens is all about planning, and it's all about managing your teams, and it's about managing expectations as well. It's about, don't everyone thinks you can't talk to tradesmen about budgets and money. Talk to them about it, have the conversation. I've had conversations with contractors and said, I can't do that for that money. Okay, so what options do we have? And then we look at other options. Having that conversation is so important. You don't waste people's time. This is the exciting bit, really. This is a bit where you get to produce. And what I'd say is if you're doing property development as a business and not just a sideline to get a bit of extra cash in the bank, if you're genuinely thinking of doing this full time as a business, I would highly recommend in your first year or two is employing a project manager or employing a site manager, or even just somebody who might offer you, monthly advice to help you now. You'll make less margin in the first year or two, but then once you've developed, you will quickly become a project manager yourself. And if you are thinking about going it full time, but don't think you can do it from day one and know everything, get help, sacrifice a bit of profit and get help from the start if you're going to go down that route, or go down the turnkey contractor market from the start so they look after everything, but be involved with it, learn from them, and understand the construction process and understand what things go wrong, because it will ensure you are a better developer in years to come.
Absolutely. And I think it's also, I've used this point before, this example, but I think it's really important as well. Whether you're working with Tony or whether you're doing it by yourself, it's really important to be clear what your finish looks like. I used the example before that if you're using £4 plugs, sockets in the development, but then you've decided that in the kitchen or in the study or in the living room, you want USB ports with a chrome finish, they're 40 quid. So if you don't specify exactly what it is that you're looking throughout the development, then the vast difference in price between quoting for chrome finish plug sockets versus the standard £4 ones could be hundreds to thousands of pounds, which ultimately is eating away at your budget,
Yeah.
your costs when you get to the end of the run. So if you're going to work with, Tony obviously will have that conversation with you, but if you're going to do it by yourself, you need to be really, really clear about what it is that you're specifying for that development and what kind of finish that you need, that you want to achieve.
And that's exactly it, Chris. And one thing I would say is if you're tendering out to contractors for that exact reason, is unless you have a schedule or unless you have a good set of drawings, you will not get comparative quotes back. That builder one, builder two, and builder three will not quote the same if there is not a clear line of specification for this project. And that is crucial, because you might go, no, I'm going to be really clever here and go, I'm going to go mid-market, but what has that mid-market included? You might find it at the top market included everything. The top price had everything included. And you see it from time to time. Another side note to this as well is specified to the value of the property, not because you think it's going to look right. And this is where when you employ people who know about the trade, I know you can go to Howden's, for example, and get a really decent navy blue kitchen, which is a budget range, but good quality, not flat pack crap, what you can buy, off the shelf. We're talking really good quality, and it will look good. You don't need to spend a fortune. But then again, likewise, if you're doing a property what's going to sell £1 million plus, you can't be putting own brand appliances in, and you can't be putting chipboard worktops in. You need to be going down the quartz for branded appliances, but you don't need to be doing that on a £200,000 terraced house. So it's understanding your finish and making sure, but again, developing relationships with suppliers and people will help you get there.
That is such good advice. The amount of developers that I saw as an estate agent. So my bread and butter was the 2 up, 2 downs. If it stank a piss, think of Chris. That was basically what I dealt with. And the amount of developers that would go in and refurb stuff with high spec finishes, but they were in one of the most roughest council estates in the area. And then they'd expect an extremely high price for the property to be marketed because they'd done these high spec finishes. And it was like, yeah, but sorry, guys, who is your end customer for this property? It's going to be someone that's local to the area that knows exactly what they're buying, and they're not going to be paying the prices that you want for this property. So then that developer then had to, over sort of a 12-month period, had to take a number of price reductions to the point where now that cash flow is just is non-existent, and they desperately need to sell the
Yeah.
property to get out and get on to the next project, because they might have a bridging loan, or they might have some other commitments that are preventing them. So really need to understand what the sort of demographic of the people that you're buying that are going to buy that property off you, or potentially rent that property off you.
Yeah,
Because if you don't hit that on the head, then that is another problem that's going to sort of knock your costs way out.
100%, 100%.
Tony, is there anything we haven't covered that you think is good advice for the audience? Just before we go to that point, guys, if you've got any final questions for Tony, please do put them in the chat.
I
So
think I
yeah,
think the, I think the main thing for me would be budget correctly from day one. If you get that right, that is having something like this is key. It will take you through the whole project right from start to finish, and it will also allow you to evaluate the project at the end. A lot of people don't then do that. They get to the project, they've got 50 grand in the bank, life's good, let's buy the next one. Look back at your costs. Where did it go wrong? Why did it go wrong? And you can start to formulate your own square meter price. My biggest thing I would say from today is don't rely on square meter prices. If you Google now how much is a new build per square meter, you will get figures ranging from £1,500 to £3,500. That's such a large bracket. Now, the average cost is £2,200 a square meter, which, looking on a plot and going, oh, that works. Now let's go dive in deeper. And don't rely on square meter rates. Develop your own square meter rates over time. And that only works by having a schedule like this and evaluating at the end and actually going, what did it cost me compared to my budget? So budgeting from day one will allow you to have much more control of a project. This budget then can also be turned into a timeline, which can in turn be used to procure for. So having a schedule of works is so important. You don't have to pay somebody to do it. If you've done a number of properties, you can still do it like this. But we've gone of the age now where there's so much profit. It doesn't matter if you miscalculate by 10, 20 grand, that's going. So being really a fay and being really pinpointing your projects and budgeting from day one is vital in my eyes, and so many people still don't do it. Find decent contractors and don't underestimate relationships in construction. This is the biggest one for me. We're in the world of Amazon, and I call it the Amazon effect. It's online, it's there, and you get it tomorrow. Construction isn't like that, and it never will be, as much as people try and put it down to it. Construction is about relationships. Find a builder who you can have a relationship with. That is more vital than getting the cheapest builder or the cheapest contractor. Because when things go wrong, if you've got a good relationship with a contractor who you can work with, you will get a solution at the right price. If you are going to the cheapest people all the time, you won't get those solutions, I promise you. Find relationships, build those relationships with suppliers, with contractors, with building control, with architects, and form a team of people who work well together. When you've got that, you're not employing a team. You don't have to pay their Christmas dues, well, unless you want to. You don't have to pay their bank holidays, but you've got a team of people who even if you haven't used them on the next project because you didn't need to, you could pick up the phone to them. And those relationships will make the difference in every project you have to come. It's not transactional. It's a relationship thing in property developing and construction, and don't underestimate that.
brilliant. Yeah, Anthony and Alex are both saying that having proper detailed budgets and contingencies in place to help secure a good outcome. And Anthony says budget properly. Great advice, Tony. I gave the same advice with insurances. Get realistic budgets early enough so you can be prepared. So thank you very much, everyone. Tony, you're feeling a bit festive. Am I right? You're getting into the swing of Advent.
I am. So yeah, it's randomly come to me this week. I'm going to be doing 24 days of tips across all my social media, including on UK Homes Network. Every day we're going to be putting a different tip. It's really hard to put everything into a webinar for that time. So I'm going to be putting a different tip. It's going to have things like how to select contractors, how to buy. So yeah, on that we will be doing. So follow us on social media. Check into UK Homes Network, and every day we're going to be posting a different Advent tip through. So yeah, we're feeling very festive. I have not launched this yet on anywhere, so you were the first people to hear about it. And it's it's great to share information, and on that we will be also launching everything. So I can say we'll be launching a free webinar ourselves in the new year, which will launch in turn our online courses. So, you know, we're not in it just to take money at Help Build. Likewise, anyone on the call today, my contact details are on there. If you've got a project you want to talk about, if you ever need some help, just give me a shout. And if I can point you in the right direction.
Amazing. Tony, thank you so much for today.
No, thanks for having me, Chris.
It's been brilliant, and I hope those figures have been useful for everyone and giving you a bit more structure to sort of estimating and costing your development. Just to reiterate there, we put Tony's contact details into the chat. So if you do want to call Tony after this, or you want to drop him an email, please do. If you want to ask him a little bit more informally, obviously Tony's in the UK Homes Network and would love to hear from you. He's doing that Advent run up to Christmas tips and advice, so please do check those out. If you haven't signed up to UK Homes Network, I'll put the link in the chat now. I did tell you a fib actually, guys, so I apologize. I did tell you that Andy Butts is our next webinar. It's not. It's actually next Friday. We've got Ben Tibbets is coming back from Land Attic, and we're going to be talking about the empty homes crisis in the UK and how we're not utilising nearly 200,000 homes across the country. It's a subject we talked about earlier on in the year and had a massive reaction. So if you guys are available, it'd be great to come and discover exactly what's going on with the empty homes. And yeah, it should be a really, really fun session that you can put your questions to. Thank you again, Tony. I really, really appreciate it, mate. I hope
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone.
Great. I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. If you want to watch the recording back, it will be available in UK Homes Network for free. So you can watch that, share it with your colleagues. And until next time, I'll catch you all guys soon.
Cheers, Chris.
Cheers.